Well, bad news is we're not going to make the deadline. So we're not going to make the deadline because our shipment from Drift Motion of our oil pump and our new threaded pipe for oil filter relocation both got delayed. In fact, the second part, that pipe for the oil filter relocation, hasn't even finished processing yet. And then the oil pump's not going to get here until tomorrow, probably around 8 o'clock at night, which just isn't going to work because Streetcar Takeover starts tomorrow, and it starts at like 5 p.m. for roll racing, and it's a like 3-hour drive from here. So it sucks. We tried our best, and I tried my best to get this thing back together and back in the car in time to make that deadline. It wasn't an unreasonable deadline. It's just a lot of things happened. We had several setbacks with the block at the machine shop. It's been dropped twice now. It slipped off of the boring machine, had to be re-sleeved. Just a ton of shit went wrong and was working against us. You know what? Not gonna let that discourage me. I've got the President's 100 CMP competition next month, so I'm gonna miss the event there. But that night, there's gonna be kind of a local meet going on. And hopefully I'll be able to introduce the car then, at least, you know. The good news is, it's a great excuse to buy a bunch of new parts for the car. One of the things I've really been wanting to do to this is upgrade the cams. I've got a fairly decent sized turbo at a 76 mil. And the stock cams weren't really gonna cut it for that. I'm hoping to make this thing push up to about 8,500 RPM safely. Hard limit, if I really wanted to stress the engine out, up to like 9,000, 9,200. It does have upgraded springs, retainers, seals, got new guides. Still on stock valves though, so that's like the last limiting factor. And I'm gonna wait until we start our next rendition of the BMW to really replace that stuff. So this is gonna be the last rendition of this engine, of this block and this configuration. Next up, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's finish this one first. And we're gonna do that by throwing in these nice Brian Crower 272 cams. So this one's for VVTi motors. Obviously I'm running a VVTi motor. I like having that kind of low end flexibility. For this one, you do have to have upgraded spring kits though. They're 264s, you can run the stock springs, 272s, 276s, and like the Daigo spec stuff. You gotta have the upgraded spring kit. And luckily I did that when I had to replace those bent valves. All right, so I guess we'll get this started. And then I'm going to start the bolts, but I'm not going to tighten them. I'm just getting them in the threads, that's it. There's a certain way or a certain pattern to pull these things down so that you don't snap the camshaft or warp the heads or something. And then each of the caps have a designation on them. It'll tell you like I2, 3, I4, I5, I6, I7. And you know, it's the intake side. And then what order they're in, and they've got an arrow telling you which way to face. And it goes from front to back as well. And I know that because I1 happens to be the unique cap, which is going to be the VVTi cap. And we're going to leave that off right now because that requires a little bit of RTV on there. Now, since I don't have the oil pump and I can't close it up to find top dead center, what I did beforehand and off camera was kind of offset the pistons so they're all recessed into the block, and no piston is at top dead center or bottom dead center, so I shouldn't have to worry about any of the piston and valve clearance issues. We should be good to go on that. Well, we finally got it in. This is the piece we've been waiting on. The piece that kept us from getting to Streetcar Takeover in Charlotte, which is actually starting today as of almost right now as I'm recording this, they're starting. This is a modified oil pump from Drift Motion. This one's modified for NAT motors and high RPM applications. Basically what they do is they just open up the ports inside there to help facilitate flow.
Rise on the track.
Bam, just like that. Oil pump's on. Went into the water pump on as well. I had to rob some bolts off of the old 2J just because I didn't really bag any of the bolts when I took this engine apart. At least not in time. Like, I started bagging the last few things that I took off and that was it. But anyway, now we can go ahead and put our final two cam caps on. Now again, this isn't going to mess with the torque sequence or anything because these are literally the last two that get tightened down. Okay. Alright, well, that takes care of the camshafts now. Realistically, I just need to throw that backing plate back on, or the back timing cover, and then I can throw the valve covers on and really seal this whole thing up, which is probably what I should do just because I don't want shit getting in the new camshafts. But just for the sake of time, before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and flip the engine over and get this the oil pan and stuff put in now. Go.